everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Penscast. I am your host, Garrett Bahana, and as always, alongside me is fellow Pennsburg contributing writer and co-host of the Penscast, Robbie Noddle. Robbie, how have you been since last week's episode?
Yeah, not too bad, Garrett. One day at a time. Some nice weather here in the greater Johnstown area, but it looks like we got some snow coming. But hey, post-trade deadline, Pens are winning some hockey games, I guess we could say, after a crazy one on Tuesday night. But I think overall, not too bad.
You know what I'm excited for, Robbie? I am very, very excited about. I don't. I guess we spring forward this weekend instead of falling back. So I may lose an hour of sleep this weekend, but I am very much excited that the sun will be setting later for the next 6-7 months or something like that.
Yeah, 6-7 months. Yeah.
I have been looking forward to setting my clock back and even losing an hour of sleep. That's how much I hate the winter. I hate when it gets dark early. I think daylight savings time should be completely abolished. But you did mention it. There was a hockey game, a very entertaining hockey game to talk about. The Penguins played the Blue Jackets on Tuesday night. It was a game that the Penguins should have won, Robbie. They should have won this game. They go down 4-0 to the Blue Jackets. Tristan Jarry gets pulled after allowing 4 goals on 12 shots. The Penguins claw their way back, tie it at 4-4. Then in overtime, Sidney Crosby gets the dagger. In overtime, the Penguins get 2 very crucial points in overtime, Robbie. There were a lot of little interwoven developing stories within the context of this 60-minute hockey game. But they found a way to do it, Robbie. That's what matters at this point of the season. They found a way to collect 2 points. It was not pretty, and you could make the argument that it was their worst game of the season. And you could make the argument that if they would have lost that game, you could have thrown in the towel there because you can't afford to be losing games against basement dwellers like the Blue Jackets at this point in the season. We're well into March now when there are only 20-some games left. You can't be making those mistakes and dropping points like that. But it was a crazy game. The Penguins get the 2 points they needed to keep pace with the Islanders in the wild card race. A lot of craziness happening in that 60 minutes, Robbie. What were your thoughts on the Penguins and Blue Jackets from earlier this week?
It felt like a complete microcosm of the Penguins season, all distilled into one game. Just pure chaos. Nothing looked right. Somehow they won, which they've technically done more than they've lost this season, at least in regulation. It was just, a very Penguins hockey game, I guess you could say. At least a very 2022-2023 Penguins hockey game. It felt like, and I was watching the game, and I'm thinking, it's 4-0. This isn't good. You could easily make the argument they should just start firing people when it went to 4-0. But a part of me was like, I just have a weird feeling they're going to find a way to get back in this game, whether it's 4-3, a painful 4-3 loss, and then something crazy happens in like the last 30 seconds. They hit a post on an empty, or like they have a wide open net to shoot at and somebody hits a post, or again, the goalie makes an unreal save or something like that to rob them, and it's saying Columbus hangs on for a 4-3 victory. That game, Columbus is just a bad team, and bad teams lose those kind of games, and I'm not going to call the Penguins good, but teams that are better than bad sometimes find a way to win games like that. And when we talk about the Penguins' problems and how it's the bottom 6, but even though the bottom 6 is terrible, the Penguins' top 6, those top 2 lines, still very good. And when they're clicking, you're going to get results like that, and they never stopped. Jason Zucker, again, maybe at this point pricing himself out of Pittsburgh, but hey, if that's what it's going to take to carry the Penguins, drag the Penguins to the playoffs, and he gets playing like that and can maybe, who knows what can happen once the postseason starts, the Penguins get there, what a guy like Zucker could maybe steal for them And Casey Smith coming in cold, shut the door, played a great game. In goal, coming in reserve for Tristan Jarry, and I mean it's just one of those games. I mean, for a team like the Penguins that's struggling and in a playoff fight, you need games like that. Not pretty, but at the end of the day, you don't ask many questions. You work on what can get better. You just take the 2 points, don't talk about it, and move on to the next one. And it just feels like the microcosm of the Penguin season. Just nobody knows what happened. It was ugly to watch, but somehow they won. And if the top six is playing like that, it's tough to say what they can do because, again, those guys aren't the problem. They haven't been the problem since day one. We know what the problems are. And when the depth is needed, they struggle. But in this game, the Penguins came out down 4-0. They could have folded. They didn't. And sometimes that's what gets you into the playoffs is games like that. And the Penguins put one together on Tuesday night against Columbus, a big comeback. The first 4-goal comeback in many years in Pittsburgh since early, I believe, in the Crosby-Malkin era that the Penguins have come back from a 4-0 deficit to win the game. So, you don't ask too many questions. You kind of burn the game tape, watch the good parts. You watch the 5 goals and just take the 2 points and throw it in the trash and move on to the next one.
And the next one will be against the New York Islanders for the final time this season. The Penguins I think they're looking for their first win against the Islanders this season. So we'll see if they can move on and respond in a much more favorable fashion against a team that they're really competing with in that wild card race and a team that they have games in hand on. So this would be a very crucial, another very big 2 points if the Penguins can go on and beat the Islanders in regulation. Really, if they can get a regulation win tonight as we record this Friday night, that would be a massive win and a massive boost for the Penguins' playoff chances. So we'll see if we get the same kind of response we did against the Blue Jackets earlier in the week. Hopefully Mike Sullivan and hopefully the Penguins are rested enough and come out more motivated than they did when they were sleepwalking against the Blue Jackets. But we're getting into the nitty gritty now. Like I said, there's only 20-some games left. The points are really, really, really crucial at this juncture of the season. So we'll see what happens as the Penguins battle against the Islanders, but we're going to switch gears now and move to our first mailbag segment as the Penscast. If you're interested, if you're a longtime listener when we were podcasting as the Pensburg Podcast, you're probably familiar with me saying if you're a longtime listener or a first-time listener and you want to contribute to the Pensburg Podcast, you could have followed the Pensburg Podcast Twitter account, but now, the Pensburg Podcast is no more. We've since rebranded to the Skating Penguin Network. You're listening to the Penscast, but we're still going to have our mailbag segment. If you want to contribute to our weekly mailbag segment, and eventually we're going to turn our mailbag segment into its own sort of mini podcast. So if you want to contribute to our mailbag podcast, you can do so by following the Skating Penguin Network on Twitter at PenguinsFFSN. And to get notified about new podcast releases and when we put up our mailbag tweets asking for your participation in this segment. We love getting all of the regular contributors week in and week out who come back, who continue to listen to this podcast, continue to ask us questions, continue to be involved in the podcast process. We're very fortunate that we've created this audience, and the audience seems to have come with us as we rebranded from the Pensburg Podcast to the Skating Penguin Network that's now affiliated with the Fans First Sports Network. So again, if you want to contribute to the mailbag segment, you can do so by following the Penscast and the Skating Penguin Network on Twitter at PenguinsFFSN. So Robbie, we'll get right into it right now. As always, you get question number 1. Question number 1 comes from Brian this week. Rob Rossi tweeted, "The 2023 Rangers are like the 2013 Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's starting to look that way. The late great Herb Brooks always said all-star teams fail because they rely solely on an individual's talent, and I feel like that saying fits this Rangers team. Robbie, do you buy it that the Rangers are turning into the 2013 Pittsburgh Penguins?
Man, there's a lot to kind of break down there. So the Rangers are coming out of a rebuild. They're about 2 years coming out of the rebuild they went into. The Penguins in 2013 were basically a buzzsaw that regular season. They didn't win the President's Trophy, but they did cruise through the Eastern Conference with the 1 seed. Remember, this was the lockout shortened year in 2013. The Blackhawks were the eventual Stanley Cup champions and the President's Trophy winners. Both teams kind of buzzed through the playoffs, but the one difference is obviously the Penguins with Malkin and Crosby have a little more upfront power than what this Rangers team does. But I think the big difference is in goal. If the Penguins get the even average goaltending from Marc-Andre Fleury, again, Thomas Vokoun was the backup that year and stepped in and played pretty decent. But I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is your number one. If he plays even average goaltending, the Penguins are very well maybe in that Stanley Cup final, and they get the NHL gets its dream final of the Blackhawks and Penguins at the height of both of those two teams' powers. But Marc-Andre Fleury was not good enough, and the Bruins kind of cruised to the Penguins in that Eastern Conference final in 4 games. Another difference was Tuukka Rask was just on another level in that series against the Penguins. So comparing, it just feels too early for this version of the Rangers to be considered the 2013 Penguins. I understand some of the comparisons, but again, they were a maybe mid-pack Stanley Cup pick coming into this season. There were definitely some holes that you could see in this team that needed filled. The defense still isn't great. You have Igor Shesterkin, who is kind of the antithesis to what Marc-Andre Fleury was for that team. He's not putting up quite the numbers he did last year, but the numbers he put up last year were borderline historic. So to say that this version of the Rangers is the 2013 Penguins, not fully buying that. I think that obviously not getting out of even the second round, I mean, not winning a cup would be disappointing to them because that is what their goal is. But I still think that they have a window here where they have plenty of time. Remember also that 2013 Penguins team at that point had been going on a pretty decent cup drought after what they were expected to create this big dynasty with Crosby and Malkin and be unbeatable and compete with the Blackhawks, to be better than the Blackhawks. The Rangers don't feel like that team yet. Maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. I think that window is still wide open for them if they can manage everything properly. But to say that they are the 2013 Penguins with the expectations, not really ready to say that yet. Question number 2, again from Brian. Tyler Kennedy tweets a day before the trade deadline about Tom Wilson coming to the Penguins. He would have been a very good fit. Can play in the top 6 or give bottom 6 the grit and toughness it's missing.
I think I've said before on the podcast that Tom Wilson is a player that you would love to have on your team and you hate him on the opposition's team. I don't know how many similarities there are between Tom Wilson and Matt Cook's game. Wilson probably contributes more offensively than or did I say Max Cook? If I did, I meant Matt Cook. Matt Cook's game. Matt Cook and Max Talbot. Too many M's, too many math sounds. But yeah, back to the question at hand. Wilson probably provides better offensive upside than Cook did when he played with the Penguins. Look, you know what you're getting with Tom Wilson at this point. He is a enforcer / power forward who, as he's continued to develop, has continued to put up more offense. I mean, when he came into the league, he was playing 82 game. He was playing a full 82 game slate, but he was finishing with like 10 points, 17 points, 19 points over 82 games. But now he's turned himself around into what has become a competent forward, at least playing 73, 63, 68 games, putting 35, 40, 44, 52 points up. So there's definitely some offense there as he's sort of rounded his game out. And given that Tom Wilson has created a reputation for himself, and given that he's played for the Capitals, which have been really the Penguins' arch rival throughout the Crosby-Malkin era, it would look weird. It would look very weird for the Penguins to employ the services of Tom Wilson. But if he were a Pittsburgh Penguin, I wouldn't really have that much of a problem. The penalties kind of irk me, but that's his game, and you're not going to change his game at this point in his career. So, to Brian's point, he's definitely going to provide grit and toughness. He's definitely going to give whatever line he is on. He's going to give it that edge that he has developed that reputation around. So, I don't know if Tyler Kennedy knew something we didn't. Obviously, this trade never materialized. Nothing ever came of it. He probably said something like this in jest, if I had to imagine. But Kennedy is probably more plugged in than I am at this point. But nothing like that happened. To Washington's point, I mean, they are 31, 28, and 6, and they were selling off a few crucial pieces right before the 3 p.m. trading deadline last week. So maybe there were a couple of rumblings, but I would not have thought that the Capitals would have been dealing within the division to one of their biggest rivals of this era in the Penguins, especially trading away Tom Wilson in his prime. That's just me. But yeah, he would have provided that grit and that tenacity that the top 9 or bottom 6 could have probably used at this point. Question number 3 comes from Brian. I may have been the only one who thought this, but instead of the players being linked to in Vancouver, we should have made a run at Kevin Hayes. He has the size and the toughness with the scoring touch, a real Kevin Stevens type player. Robbie, what are your thoughts on forward Kevin Hayes?
I think I'd rather have JT Miller personally. I know the contract's not great for Miller, but I think he's a little bit better player. Though again, the cost would have been prohibitive, at least from in my opinion. It would not have been the trade to make, given what Vancouver likely would have wanted. But I don't think, again, Kevin Hayes, you're trading with not only a division opponent, but one of your fiercest rivals. He would not have come cheap, and I don't know if that price would have been worth what he could bring to the team for the rest of the season. Again, yeah, he would definitely add something the Penguins are missing, but I also don't know if that price would have been something that makes sense given what the Penguins have in terms of assets for the trade deadline. So I think I definitely can see why Kevin Hayes would pop up in conversations. I'm kind of surprised he wasn't traded at some point, but the whole trade deadline for the Philadelphia Flyers is pretty baffling when you look at them, what they did, which was just about nothing, and they had plenty of pieces to kind of move on from. James Van Riemsdyk was a name that popped up with the Penguins, but nothing happened there. Again, price probably too high for a division rival. But I mean, I don't hate the Kevin Hayes idea. I just don't think it was even if there would have been interest, a price the Penguins would have been willing or should have paid for his services to come to Pittsburgh. Question number 4 is from Brian. We're going to switch sports here a little bit. Brian Reynolds, Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder, reportedly countered a 6-year, $80 million offer from the Pirates with a 8-year, $134 million offer. The website Rum Bunter came in with the idea of seven years between 110 and 115 million. I think you have to try to do that to keep him here. Feels like the team is close to turning it all around.
I am so jaded with the Pirates, and so jaded with like baseball as a whole. I've been keeping loose tabs on it and watching the pitch clock changes and the time of game changes that baseball's made this season, and that has kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So I'll be curious to see. I cannot sit through. Just to give you an example, to go off on a little tangent, like the Red Sox and Yankees on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, that first pitch would be at 7:05, and that a regular, your average Yankees Red Sox game would not end until like midnight. Between the commercials that you broadcast, between pitchers just fiddling with their equipment on the mound, between batters stepping out of the box, between every at bat, stepping out of the box, fixing their glove, fixing their cup, fixing their helmet, all of this. So I'm really curious to see how baseball is going to improve and how the players are going to adjust to the time of game aspects. That has nothing to do with Brian's question regarding Brian Reynolds. Boy, back to the Pirates, huh? I think 6 years over 80 million over 6 years comes out to about what, 13 million per season. And Rum Bunter thinks that the sweet spot is 110 to 115. I was looking and doing the math. I think there's a compromise to be made, maybe 112 million over 7 years. That's 16 million, or roughly 16 million per season. So that's a bit of a bump up from what the Pirates reportedly offered and what he reportedly rejected. But I think 16 million is a fair compromise, a meet in the middle. I don't think Brian Reynolds is. I don't know how many Pirates fans listen to this podcast, but I don't think Brian Reynolds is a top 5 outfielder in the National League or Major League Baseball. Maybe at the bottom of a top 10 list, but I don't think he's a franchise-altering cornerstone. But however, given what the Pirates have gone through and how mediocre they've been since like 2015, he is arguably probably their best player until maybe a guy like O'Neal Cruz comes into his own, or Brian Hayes maybe comes into his own and delivers on the potential that we were sold when these players were drafted or signed as international free agents. But meeting in the middle, 112 million over 7 years. I think the Pirates can do that business, and I wonder if Reynolds would be satisfied with that's the long-term offer you're looking for. I think Reynolds is 26, 27 years old, so that takes you through the rest of your prime years. If the Pirates are actually serious on competing and fielding a winner, they always said 2024 was the year. Are they going to keep moving the goalposts back to 2025, 2026? I've been told for 3 or 4 seasons now, as the Pirates have picked first overall in Major League Baseball drafts, that the Pirates are gathering all these prospects, and Ben Cherington it's a slow burn rebuild, but Ben Cherington is the guy. Don't worry, put your faith in Ben Cherington. I started out this question saying I was jaded with the Pirates. I've gone on a few tangents already in the span of like the 3 minutes answering this question. But yes, I think 112 million over 7 years is a good middle ground for Reynolds. If he accepts it, it takes you through his prime seasons. And if the Pirates do come out of this deal and act on their promises of being a true contender in the National League, which I personally don't expect, then I will eat crow. I will come on here. And Brian, you can ask the same question again and tell me that I was wrong, that the Pirates have turned it around and they have competed. But until that day comes, I am going to continue to be jaded by the Pittsburgh Pirates and the on-field product. Question number 5 for you, Robbie, also comes from Brian. Can you explain, this is a good one because headlines have been popping up recently since the trade deadline. Can you explain the Arizona Coyotes taking on so much salary at the deadline to reach the cap floor? I've been seeing people complain that they should be investigated for it, and I would like to understand why.
So as far as I understand it, it's just a legal within the CBA kind of NHL money laundering scheme, basically. They basically facilitate trades, take on money, reach the cap floor, because there's loopholes in the CBA that can be exploited, and generally, it's all a rich boys club. No owner's gonna put, especially take on the NHL with something like this, and it somehow works out for everyone. The Coyotes are kind of a middleman for these trades. Should they be investigated? I don't know what there is to investigate when it's very clearly being done out in the open. It's not exactly a secret what's happening here. It's been going on for years. So should they?
Morally, I don't want to cut you off, Robbie. Morally,
Good.
it's wrong. It looks bad on the surface from a fan's perspective, but you're right, Robbie. There's technically nothing wrong with what the Coyotes are doing.
No, it's not, and it was kind of the. Now again, this loophole has been taken out of the NHL, but the years in the past where teams would backload contracts or front load contracts, more or less backload contracts. Remember the Ilya Kovalchuk? That's been 2010, 2011 when he signed that deal with the Devils, that 10-year deal that was originally nixed by the NHL. Teams would find ways to work the salary cap, and that's kind of what happens when you have a hard cap league. Like that, you don't necessarily have, like the NBA is a soft cap league, so they don't have as much of this money laundering kind of system in place. And whatever the NFL uses, there's guardrails in place that this doesn't happen, and it's something that can be prevented by simply putting in the proper restrictions for this happening. But as long as the CBA is as it stands, and it doesn't seem like either side is necessarily willing to take this on, because the players that are getting traded don't care. They're still getting paid. The owners, it's just a way to improve. Everybody can take advantage of it. It's not like it's something reserved for like the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens. It's not like it's just a rule there that says that only the original 6 teams are allowed to do this. It's something that everybody can take advantage of. The Coyotes are, that organization's a complete burning tire fire for the most part anyway. So nobody really cares. They meet their salary cap floor. They remain terrible. They take on some money, and in the end, they end up getting some kickbacks and picking stuff out of it that they can turn into players down the line. So yeah, it's all legalized money laundering, basically within the constraints of the CBA. And again, nothing to be investigated because 1, it's not technically illegal per NHL rules. 2, it's pretty much done in the open. There's nothing really to investigate. It's not like they're trying to sneak anything under anybody's nose. So why do people want it to be investigated? Because it's quite literally, it's quite obviously morally not right to do, and it provides. You can't really say it provides an unfair advantage because anybody can take advantage of it, but it's shady, and it's just a way to work around what guardrails are in place. Question number 6 from Brendan. Of the non-Pens Metro teams in the hunt, that would be Carolina, New Jersey, the Rangers, and the Islanders. Which one would you A, cheer for, B, stomach, C, are indifferent to, or D, outright cheer against?
All right, let's take a look here. Which one would I cheer for? Probably Carolina. Carolina, I don't view them as a real arch nemesis to the Penguins. There hasn't really been bad blood that's developed between the two franchises. So I'd probably cheer for Carolina, and they're kind of what's often considered high flying, offensively skilled brand of hockey. So I'll go A. I'll cheer for the Carolina Hurricanes. B, which one would I stomach? I would stomach the New Jersey Devils. I was deciding between whether I wanted to cheer for Carolina or New Jersey, but I'll still cheer for Carolina. I'll stomach New Jersey. New Jersey, they haven't been good for so long now, and they're finally coming out of it with a lot of good young players. So if they go on a run, and they've had such a great season this season, if they go on a run, I'd be interested to see where they go into the playoffs. I'm indifferent towards the Islanders. I don't really have anything for or against the Islanders, but I absolutely cannot stand the Rangers, their fan base, their goal song, everything about the Rangers, it just irritates me. I was irrationally angry when they beat the Penguins last season because, I mean, we all knew the Penguins had the better team. They just couldn't get league average goaltending when they needed it the most, or else that series would have been over in 5 games. I can't stand. I really can't stand the Rangers, and it really comes down to the New York fan base, and it's not just the Rangers. It's a lot of the teams in New York. How a lot of the fan bases there, and a lot of the fans act holier than thou. Like it's New York is sacred ground in all of the major sports leagues, and we're so much better than you. And we're New York, and you're not. You are beneath us because we live in New York City or whatever. So yeah, Carolina, New Jersey, Islanders, Rangers is how I would rank that question. Question number 7 comes from Brian. This is a good one too. I'm curious to see where this goes. Warner Brothers Discovery reportedly wants to back out of the regional sports network broadcast game. What is going to happen to the Penguins and Pirates games because they are aired on AT&T Sportsnet, which is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery? Could this be a good thing in relation to what may happen, which could be potentially no blackouts?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens here because there, with all the options available now, that with streaming and all that, you never know which direction this could go. My top guess would be that someone buys these Root Sports regional or AT&T Sports regional networks and continues to air them. Though, I mean, is there a streaming option available? Possibly, maybe. I doubt that ESPN wants to get into this this thing where they're paying all these local broadcasts and stuff like that to put them on ESPN Plus. So I don't know exactly what could happen here. Again, this isn't something you see in like European soccer where leagues as a whole sign up contracts with different broadcasters. Like NBC has the Premier League, and you can watch all the Premier League games on their various outlets. So how they do this, I don't know. It'd be great to get out of the blackouts. It would be fantastic that way. Maybe I could pop on ESPN and not have to worry about paying for a streaming service that carries a local regional sports network. That's something that's not necessarily available to everyone. There's only, I think, 2 that carry AT&T Sports Network streaming services wise, not necessarily cable wise. But this is something that when I saw this news, I wanted to keep an eye on because it could go a bunch of different directions with all the options that are out there available now. I think that the best bet would be that someone buys the service from Warner Brothers Discovery and rebrands AT&T Sports Network into whatever. I mean, it's been so many different things. Root Sports, Fox Sports Network, if you are old enough to remember that. So many different things that it'll be interesting to see what happens because a lot of teams this season, and I believe last season as well, were broadcast on regional networks by Bally Sports Network, which was owned by Sinclair, which owns a lot of local TV stations and stuff. Well, Sinclair is on the verge of bankruptcy, which would devastate, possibly completely eliminate their their regional sports broadcasting branch. So there could be a lot of regional sports teams that are looking for broadcast partners here within the next, not even year, within the very next 2 to 3 months. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because it's a completely different landscape than when this all started before. The Penguins and the Pirates both did their own TV contracts with AT&T Sports Network, which was the parent company being Warner Brothers Discovery. So something to keep an eye on to see how all this plays out and which route this all goes with all the different ways that you can watch television in 2023. Question number 8 from Brian. Would you have liked to see a goalie added at the deadline? Personally, I say yes, just to assure that what happened last playoffs doesn't happen again if we do make it.
So I am going to default to fellow Pennsburg writer Adam Gretz. He did the research just a couple of days ago. So take the Columbus game out of the equation, in which DeSmith appeared in relief for Tristan Jarry. We'll start here. He was doing the research on March 4th. The Penguins have a .464 points percentage when DeSmith is the goalie of record, and their points percentage is .693 when Jarry is the starter. So he looked into it, did some more research, and came out with this factoid. No team in the league has a bigger negative gap in point differential from their starting goalie to their backup goalie this season than the Penguins. So their points percentage, like I mentioned, when Jarry plays was .693. When DeSmith plays or another backup plays, it's .451, which is a difference of minus 242. So that would be like .242 if you're looking at averages and percentages. Detroit was next. Their starter, they had a points percentage by goalie at .590, and with their backups coming in, they were at .361. That was their points percentage. Again, that was Detroit, but Pittsburgh is worse. They have the biggest negative differential between the biggest negative gap in point differential from their starting goalie to their backup goalie. So that goes to show you how slippery a slope the Penguins have been treading this season when it comes to their backup goalie play. All of this goes to say that, yes, I would have liked to see them add a goaltender. Personally, probably, I think they could have done better than extending DeSmith for an extra 2 years at $1.8 million. You could have probably allocated that money to a probably more effective goaltender. However, like I said, goaltending is a slippery slope, and it's often a statistic. A lot of those statistics have to be looked at a year-by-year basis, because one goaltender can be lights out one year, he can come back the next year and completely fall flat on his face. It's a very, very what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very precarious position to be a goaltender in today's NHL, because really, outside of a few goaltenders, maybe like your Vasilevskis and maybe a couple of others that I can't think of off the top of my head, it's a very slippery game, and inconsistencies can plague even the best goaltenders within the blink of an eye. So, yeah, I would have liked them to see them add a goalie at the deadline. Maybe they go a different direction in the offseason, but they decide to shed some more salary. After this season, DeSmith only has 1 more year left on his contract. Maybe that's more palatable for a couple of teams looking for a goaltender, but we'll have to see what happens once we get into the offseason and if they do change anything when it comes to their goalie situation. Question number 9 from Brian. When is a winning streak considered a heater?
Well, I guess it depends on the team. I mean, if you're really bad like the Blue Jackets and they go on a 3-game winning streak, you'd think you'd call that a heater. I'm going to say 5 games as an average. 3, I consider 3 games a winning streak. So give a little cushion there to 5. I'll call 5 a heater. I mean, that's 10 points in a row. Now, I think that would change for even like football, because, again, 1 game a week, maybe 3 games a heater. Baseball, you have 5, 6, 7 games a week. So maybe you're looking at 7, 8 games in a row is considered a heater in baseball. Again, I think that can vary, though, depending on who the team is. The Pirates winning 5 games in a row, that's nearly unheard of. That's like a heater in Pittsburgh for the Pirates. But the Yankees going on 5 in a row, I don't know. Not the Yankees that are playing now with all the talent they have. And I think it kind of varies. Like Boston, if Boston won 3 in a row, you wouldn't call that a heater. But if they won 5 in a row, even if you call that a heater, the Boston's been on a heaters pretty much since a puck dropped on opening night. With the numbers they're putting up this year. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that the definition varies depending on the sport, the team, the situation. Um, so I'd say for the NHL, an average would be five games in a row. Baseball, again, 7, 8 games. Football, let's say 3. Basketball is roughly the same as hockey, uh, 5 games in a row. But again, all can vary. Soccer, I mean, you get 3 games in a row when you're playing 1 or 2 a week, maybe 4. It all depends. I think it all varies. You can go on season long heaters. You can go on monthly heaters. I think it all varies, and it's a very subjective term to what what each individual would define as a team going on a heater. Number 10, question number 10 from Brendan. I'm dreading hockey without Sidney Crosby. He has 2 years left after this year. What do you think he does? 2 to 3 years at 10 million per. 2 to 3 years at 6 million per. Maybe retire or other.
Sidney Crosby is a very curious case. He's gone on record and publicly said he wants to get through this current contract and reevaluate his options from there. I think with the camaraderie and the brotherhood that Crosby, Malkin, and Letang have, I think they would like to go out together. That is just a guess, a hunch. But Crosby is curious. He loves the game. He is the epitome of a hockey player. He eats, he breathes, he sleeps this game. That is how much he is devoted to his craft. So I could see him playing into his 40s. I could also see him playing because I could also see him not playing because he's accomplished everything there is to accomplish. He will go down as one of the top 5 players of all time. He obviously doesn't need the money. So it's going to come down to, at age 38 or 39, whenever his contract does expire, if he feels his body has enough to go through the grind of an 82-game season. But I know that probably no one else in Pittsburgh probably conditions his body the way Crosby does. So there are a lot of different options on the table to explore when Crosby's contract does expire. I try not to think about it because we are closer to the end than we are the beginning for the big 3, and I just try to live in the moment with this group because you don't know when the next game could be the last if something crazy and unfortunate happens. But if he does come back, I do imagine he comes back at a deal similar to what Letang and Malkin got this summer, maybe 6-7 million per. I don't know if he asks for 10 million at 38 years old. I think the possibility of retirement is there because there's nothing left for him to prove and accomplish. I think eventually maybe he could become a coach or a general manager. I think he loves the game of hockey that much that he could devote his talents off ice to player personnel, that sort of thing. Or he could go back to Cole Harbor and just live a quiet, peaceful life up there with no real interruptions and just enjoy retirement and enjoy his life, post-hockey life. So a lot of options on the table for Crosby. We'll see what the future holds for number 87 as we do get closer to the dreaded end to this championship window that everyone loves to talk about. But I'm not going to think about that now. I'm not going to think about that this year, next year, or the year after. Whenever Sidney Crosby wants a press conference to announce his retirement is when I'll sit up in my chair and then I'll say, well, I guess this is really happening. But until then, I'm going to enjoy what we get on the ice with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. Question number 11. The final question comes from 2 question askers who have the same question related to Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Alvin Arnold and Brendan have some questions regarding Pierre-Olivier Joseph. why is Dmitry Kulikov, why does he get the start over Joseph, the younger defenseman, who, in Joseph's case, hasn't really been all that bad this season?
Good question. Now, Kulikov, this question was asked obviously before the game on Tuesday night, and I thought Kulikov was fine. I thought he was completely competent. Did exactly, he played 15 minutes. Now, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, due to some lineup shuffling, did play, but played very little. I would still rather see Pierre-Olivier Joseph in the lineup over Dmitry Kulikov, just because I think he brings something offensively that quite obviously that Kulikov does not. So I think overall, it's not really fair to Dmitry or Pierre-Olivier Joseph at all. And I'd rather see Joseph in the lineup. Why that was done, I guess it's a Mike Sullivan thing. And I think if you look at the roster, if he had to pull somebody out, if you know Mike Sullivan, that was probably who it was always going to be. Again, we talked about at the beginning of the season how we figured that Pierre-Olivier Joseph was on his way out the door very early in the season as a trade piece, but he's been here all season, put together a great season. Defensively, he's not the best, but he does have some good defensive moments. I just think offensively, with how this team struggles to score points, having a guy like that in the lineup is more of a plus than having a guy like Kulikov in the lineup. But they didn't bring in Kulikov for zero reason. I know it was nice to get that Brock McGinn contract out the door, and he does provide some depth, but you already have a complete logjam at the top of that blue line or throughout that blue line. So I really think that it was the obvious choice if you understand Mike Sullivan's roster management. I would not have done it, but I'm not the head coach. But I think that at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, when the playoffs start, should the Penguins make it once again, I really think that it will be Pierre-Olivier Joseph in that starting lineup, and I certainly hope for that's what it is, unless Kulikov would come in and be a defensive master. But I think overall, Joseph was the odd man out. It almost looks like a seniority type thing with that, but it is what it is, and we'll see how he does against the Islanders. And again, you have back-to-backs this weekend with the Flyers and Rangers, and then a big week next week with technically Sunday against the Rangers, and then twice more against the Rangers next week. So if Kulikov struggles, I think you'll see Joseph back in the lineup sooner rather than later. But if Kulikov comes out and helps that defense, maybe he gets a longer stretch of play now that he's here in Pittsburgh.
All right, that'll do it for the mailbag, and in turn, that will do it for this episode of the Penscast. I'd like to thank you all for listening to last week's episode, which was the first episode under the new Penscast banner. And while the rebrand and the official move has not been finalized just yet, it will likely be finalized at the end of this month into early April. While things have not been finalized just yet, I'd like to again thank you all for listening and coming with us to this new project as we continue to rebrand the podcast and reshape the podcast. And again, I'd just like to thank everyone who took the time to download and say some nice things in some of the comment sections that I was reading. And your support is really the main reason why we are able to do what we do and rebrand into the Penscast and rebrand into the Skating Penguin Network with Fans First Sports Network. So I can't thank everyone enough who continues to listen week in and week out, or if you're finding us for the first time as the Penguins gear up for another postseason run. But for Robbie Noggle, I have been Garrett Bahana. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Penscast, and we will talk to all of you again this time next week.